What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. I know it's been quite a while since I've been able to bring some content to you guys, so I appreciate you guys if you've been able to hang in here with the channel. I know it's been kind of dead the last 2 weeks. It was a crazy close to the end of the year of 2023. So just been trying to gather everything around for the beginning of the year here and make sure we keep the content consistent going forward, and have a set plan for Scotty Talks NBA going forward in 2024. So that's what I've been building here with the downtime and kind of figuring out what I want to do here. But ultimately, back today, obviously, I don't have any of my co-hosts here with me on this fine Friday, but we will be coming to you regularly. Tuesdays with Zach, as we were doing last year at the beginning of this season, right? Every Tuesday, Zach Noble is going to join me from Ball is Life in the All Things NBA pod. He will join me every Tuesday for our Turn Up the Volume segment. And then we'll also dive into whatever, relevant news around that time. So obviously there's a lot of talk about the All-Star voting so far, trade deadlines approaching. So we'll be getting into all types of that kind of stuff going forward from here. But that will start back up next Tuesday, the Tuesday of next week. That is, I know today is the 5th. So next Tuesday will be January 9th. That'll be the next episode of Scotty Talks NBA featuring Zach Noble of Ball is Life. And then, of course, we have the Friday edition of the show, which I'm coming to you here on a Friday, but I don't have my co-host here with me, Slim. He will be here with me every Friday going forward. As far as what we're going to cover, me and Slim, we're going to get into top 10 power rankings at the end of each and every week, just to give you an update of the top 10 teams that we're seeing across the league. I'm sure our lists will differ and vary week to week. But that's the point, to see where each other's minds are at and kind of get a good understanding of where the NBA is as a whole, or at least the top quality teams, right, with the top 10 power rankings. Aside from that, we're going to shine the spotlight on our offensive, defensive players of the week around the NBA every Friday as well. So pretty consistent content that you're going to get from Slim and I. Pretty consistent content you're going to get every Tuesday from Zach and I. Slim and I will be here every Friday. And then, of course, once the NFL season, if you guys don't know, I do a bunch of different content. So I do NFL content over on the NFL Turf Talk DSM Media channel. This is the NBA DSM Media channel. I work on both. And then I also obviously work on Philadelphia-centric sports, 76ers, Eagles, so on and so forth, Phillies. With the Faithful Fanatic, which is also part of DSM Media, our big umbrella company here. So obviously just trying to lay out a plan, keep everybody in the loop of what the schedule is going to look like. Once NFL season concludes, I'll be back with more consistent content throughout the week, and we may see an uptick on that 2 shows per week. But for now, throughout the NFL playoffs, we're going to stick with 2 Scotty Talks NBA shows per week. Tuesdays with Zach Noble, Fridays with Slim. So yeah, that's the update there for the 2024 plan. We'll keep it moving. For this episode, I should have probably got into that from the beginning. That's my bad here. But what we're going to get into, we're obviously going to touch on the OG Anunoby trade. It's the name of the episode, right? The OG Anunoby trade to the New York Knicks. The Toronto Raptors get R.J. Barrett, a second-round pick from Detroit, and Emmanuel Quickley in return, along with OG Anunoby to New York. Precious Achiuwa also joins him on that trip to New York in that trade. So we'll talk about that trade, how it's affected each team so far, and who I think ultimately will win this trade. We'll get into last night's action because, to be quite honest, I was a little sketchy of the two, just this, the duo NBA slate, the 2-game NBA slate for the Thursday night TNT special. But I will say the NBA came through with some great entertainment last night on that slate. And I love and hate the idea of the 2-game slate because there's obviously 30 teams in the NBA. You can have more than 2 games per night, right? Especially when you got teams playing back-to-backs on certain nights and, so on and so forth. So I hate it for that reason, right? Because there is going to be nights where on Thursday the entertainment level is just not there. You're going to get a blowout, and maybe you would love to tune into another game, right? That maybe is a little more competitive, but you won't have that option. I don't know if this is a thing going forward with TNT where where the NBA is only going to have 2 games total on Thursdays. That way, TNT gets both of those games and they get full viewership from the NBA spectrum. But I do also, while I say I hate parts of it, I also love parts of it. And you love the part that you got last night because you're watching it with the entire NBA community as far as non-casuals, right? I shouldn't say casuals. There's fans that just love their team. There's fans that just love a certain player or certain players. And then there's fans that just love the entire NBA. I'm one of those fans that genuinely loves the entire NBA, also love the Sixers, also love certain players throughout the league. So I try to cover it all. I try to see it all. I try to watch it all. And for that reason, the rest of the NBA community that is like me, that just enjoys the league as a whole, we watch it together when there's only 2 games like that on a Thursday night nationally televised. We're forced to watch the same games, enjoy the games together, and ultimately the communication, the dialogue around the games is a lot more fun because you don't have box score watchers. You have people that are actually watching the games. So for that aspect of feeling like you're in a community watching a team outside of your favorite was really fun last night between the Bucks and the Spurs, and then the Nuggets and the Warriors out west. Watch both of those games in totality, and I mean, they were beyond entertaining, man. They were 2 of the best games that I've gotten a chance to watch this season. Now, I'm not ranking top 10, top 5. They're just 2 of the best games that I've gotten a chance off the top of my head to watch this season outside of Sixers basketball, and they really fulfilled. And so, to that point, want to break down those games, get into kind of what happened because you had a little bit of in the first game, not a passing of the torch, but you look at Wemby, you look at Giannis, very similar body types, both foreign players. They have a very similar path as far as what Wemby could follow if he can bulk up, right? Create some muscle there with that slim build, excuse me. So that's something that you're watching for in that game, that matchup, right? The now versus the future. And I thought that was really fun. The Spurs made that game really competitive, lost on a heartbreaker. The Nuggets and the Warriors, right? The Nuggets come from behind late in this game. They go into the fourth quarter down 13, end up coming away with a win. I'm going to get into those games, obviously. And then we'll get into the top 10 power rankings, even though I don't have Slim with me here. Still going to get into them. But let's go ahead and just get into this now, right? I want to start at the top with the OG Anunoby trade to Toronto, or excuse me, from Toronto to the New York Knicks. So as I mentioned earlier, the Raptors receive Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and a Detroit Pistons 2024 second round pick. The Knicks receive OG Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa. You look at what has transpired since this trade has happened. I'm obviously coming to you a little bit later after the trade has transpired and they've had a chance to play a few games. But the 3 key pieces to this trade is obviously OG Anunoby going to New York, and then Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett going in return to Toronto. So looking at these 3 players so far in each of their first 2 games with their new teams, let's start with OG Anunoby. He was the biggest piece in the trade. First game, he has 17.6 rebounds, 2 steals, helps the New York Knicks grab a victory against the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was a game where you immediately get to see OG Anunoby's effect on this team and what he brings, because who does he get the great assignment of defensively when the New York Knicks now play the Minnesota Timberwolves? It's going to be Ant Edwards, one of the best players in the NBA, one of the most athletic players in the NBA, one of the best scorers in the NBA. And ultimately, OG Anunoby shows his value as a 3-and-D player immediately for this team. Guides them, I shouldn't say guide. Randall and Brunson obviously lead this team, but he helps this team get to a win over one of the best teams in the NBA. He did have 6 fouls in this game, so he did end up fouling out. It happens, man. You're playing against one of the best scorers in the league. He was 7 for 12 from the field, 3 for 6 from the three-point line. Once again, fulfilling that 3-and-D label that he's been labeled with here. Then in his second meeting, he played for the New York Knicks against the Chicago Bulls. This was also a win for the New York Knicks. He was a little bit less effective in this game. 11 points, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, 5 for 9 from the field, 1 for 4 from the three-point line. So less impressive when I say he just didn't score as many points, right? He didn't get closer to what he averages on the season. But that being said, they win the game. And let's be clear, OG Anunoby's identity fits Tom Thibodeau's team. He is a defensive-minded player. That is where he excels. He can also shoot the three ball from the corner. That is where he excels. Everything else is a little bit closer to average for OG Anunoby, right? He's a 3-and-D guy. That's his role. And I think he's fulfilled it so far. Let's go to Immanuel Quickley, who's had a great start to his tenure with Toronto. In the first matchup with the Cleveland Cavaliers, you had the Toronto Raptors come away with the victory, not only, but you also had Immanuel Quickley come away with 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists, 2 steals. He was 5 for 13 from the field, 2 for 5 from the three-point line. So you ultimately get to see Quickley's value to the Toronto Raptors immediately there. He provides shooting, man. That's what the Toronto Raptors needed. They lost Fred VanVleet. They needed not only a replacement for Fred VanVleet, but a replacement for the future of that void that Fred VanVleet was going to leave there. It was time for FVV to move on. He goes to Houston. There was a void left. Not enough shooting on this team. Gary Trent Jr. not fulfilling his role with this team at the time. And so they go out, they get Immanuel Quickley, and he provides exactly what they need. He's going to give them a young point guard for the future that presents a significant scoring threat. We saw what he was able to do as a six-man off the bench for the New York Knicks. Then you get to the second showing for Immanuel Quickley for the Toronto Raptors in a win over the Memphis Grizzlies. This game, he absolutely dominated. 26 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. He was 8 for 18 from the field, 5 for 8 from the three-point line. Once again, that is exactly what Toronto brings Immanuel Quickley in to do here. Play alongside Scotty Barnes and space the floor out. I don't think the Toronto Raptors are done. I think, they'll ultimately end up moving Siakam, or he'll leave in free agency at the end of this season. So he's not planning for the future. But this core of Immanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes, and then the guy that I'm about to talk about next, RJ Barrett, who is from Toronto, right? He is a Canadian. So he's back home. That core is going to be your core for the future if you're the Toronto Raptors, period. Grady Dick, you can add him in there, the first round pick from this past NBA draft. Look at RJ Barrett in the 2 wins for the Toronto Raptors here. 19 points in the first game against Cleveland, 9 rebounds. He did have 5 fouls, 5 turnovers. Not the greatest showing there, but 6 for 12 from the field, so didn't shoot too bad. In the second showing against Memphis, he had 14 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 5 for 12 from the field, 2 for 5 from the three-point line. RJ Barrett is an interesting case because I know a lot of people will argue that Immanuel Quickley is the bigger piece that the Toronto Raptors are receiving. And I do agree with that right now. I do think that Immanuel Quickley is the better player when you look at it from an efficiency standpoint and just the boomer bust capability of Immanuel Quickley. But I will say, futuristically, looking into the future of this team, I believe RJ Barrett could grow in to that second fiddle to Scotty Barnes. I believe he could be the second star on this team. There's mixed reviews of RJ Barrett in New York, his time, right? Coming out of Duke, right? I'm biased towards RJ Barrett. I got to watch him at Duke. I got to hear his story about him coming to Duke, him growing up. I've gotten to watch a lot of RJ Barrett basketball. So I'm a little biased. I have a little bit more belief in him than maybe the casual fan that did not watch him at Duke, is not a fan of him from that time. But I had a chance to watch him in New York as well. And I thought, he had an up and down a few years there, a few seasons. It's tough for young players to play for Tom Thibodeau, man. He's a very discipline-oriented coach. And all it takes is a few mess ups and you can be removed. And, it's a lot of pressure that comes with that, as well as a lot of pressure that comes with playing in New York. Now, RJ Barrett goes to a Toronto team that's kind of retooling or rebuilding in a sense. They're getting younger. And a lot of the expectations from New York and trying to build a contender there are gone, right? He has time now to develop. He has time to, get back to what he needs to do to become a better player, which is becoming a more efficient scorer. That's the biggest thing. Cut the turnovers, become a more efficient scorer, become a better playmaker, and then lock in defensively. Those are the things that you should be able to get out of a guy like RJ Barrett, a 6'5", 6'6" wing caliber, wing type of player here. He should be a 3-and-D-esque OG and Anunoby at the very least, right? I think he can be better than that. I think his cap is higher than that personally. So to that point, I think RJ Barrett will end up being the better piece of this deal. And I do think that RJ Barrett will end up being the best player involved in this deal. Might sound crazy if you love OG Anunoby, and I understand that. OG Anunoby is a guy, like Julius Randle said, he plays basketball the right way. I get it. But OG Anunoby is not a max contract player in my eyes. And that was the big conundrum, right? When you're thinking about the 76ers, I'm a 76ers fan, duh. So when I'm thinking about the 76ers, what moves could they make going towards the trade deadline? You bring in Nick Nurse, right? He has the familiarity with OG Anunoby from Toronto, won a championship with him. My concern was bringing him in and then feeling obligated to give him a max contract-esque Tobias Harris. You make the trade for Tobias Harris mid-season. You trade for Jimmy Butler as well. You get to the end of the season. You know one of them has to go. You can't bring them both back. And Jimmy wants to walk. He wants to go to Miami because he doesn't want to play with Ben Simmons or Brett Brown, whatever the case may be there. Sixers, desperate panic. Boom, max contract at Tobias Harris that just should have never been given. That's the simple truth. It should have never been given. And I do believe that OG Anunoby kind of falls into that same umbrella of, great 3-and-D, top echelon role player. But max contract star player, I don't see it. I don't believe in it. And that was my biggest worry with bringing a guy in like OG Anunoby at the trade deadline, is feeling like you're obligated to give him a max contract. Obviously, the Sixers have 2 max slots that are going to be available this offseason. One's going to go to Maxey. The other one can either be spread out amongst multiple players or given to that one worthy max slot player. Say you trade for Zach LaVine. That's the type of player I'm talking about there, but don't think that's going to happen. Nonetheless, that was my concern for New York in this situation. But when you look at Julius Randle, you look at Jalen Brunson, you do kind of like the fit there with OG Anunoby in the middle at the 3. I still just don't think they're close to contending for an NBA championship. I don't think they're close to getting out of the Eastern Conference. I really don't. I don't think that this moves the needle enough. I still think the Knicks need to make another move if they want to ultimately get to that upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, right? Overall, what I would say about this trade, I love this trade for both sides. The Raptors get 2 young guys with nice potential. I mentioned, I think RJ Barrett will end up being the best player out of this deal. RJ and Emmanuel quickly obviously fit Scotty Barnes' timeline, right? As the Toronto Raptors are trying to retool or rebuild here with those 3. OG Anunoby gives New York Knicks a legit 3-and-D guy. As I mentioned, like nothing that they had before. It's RJ Barrett is not a legit 3-and-D guy. He can't shoot the 3 ball well enough. OG Anunoby is good enough to be labeled as a 3-and-D guy. He's consistent. But the caveat, I don't think he's worth a max contract, which is what he's going to be looking for. Ultimately, both teams are 2-0 since the trade. All 3 of these pieces that I mentioned are all playing pretty well for their respective teams, their new teams. So the ruling's out, man, on who won this trade. But I am going to say, because the Knicks, I'm going to lay my prediction out here, because the Knicks are not necessarily a legitimate contender in the Eastern Conference, like the Milwaukee Bucks, like the Boston Celtics. If you believe in the 76ers like me, I'm not going to put them up there with those 2 because they just haven't done it, right? But I do believe in the Sixers being up there in that class. If you don't believe that, that's fine. Doesn't change what I think about the Knicks. I don't think they're in that class. And with my belief in that, I have to say, I think the Toronto Raptors won this trade because I think they'll end up getting the better player long-term in RJ Barrett. And I think they're still getting a player that they desperately needed in Emmanuel Quickley, what he presents to a team. So I'll give the win to the Toronto Raptors. We're going to have to come back to this maybe a season from now, maybe 2 seasons from now, to really know who won this trade. But ultimately got the trade season of the NBA kicked off on the right foot, man. I was really excited to see this get done. It's always fun when you see teams trying to get closer to the contending, make each conference a lot more interesting. And I'm interested to see what the Toronto Raptors do with Pascal Siakam as well, man. Guys like Gary Trent Jr. Let's see what they do with those guys if they decide to hold on to those guys through the trade deadline. It'll be interesting to find out. But let's move on. Talked about the trade. Let's move on to last night's action because I had a hell of a time watching that last night. Also had a beautiful slip that hit last night. Let me give you the slip, just so you know. Not going to take credit for the slip because my boy Mark, shout out to Mark out there if you're watching, brother, gave me this beautiful slip. It cashed out for $174 last night for me, $25 wager. So came out to plus 598 on FanDuel. It was the Denver Nuggets and the Golden State Warriors game. We had Jonathan Kuminga over 10.5 points. So Jonathan Kuminga at least 11 points. Kuminga over 2.5 rebounds. Jamal Murray over 4 assists. Michael Porter Jr. over 4 rebounds. Jamal Murray over 22.5 points. And Damian Lillard over 34.5 points plus assists. So obviously, first game, Dame Lillard ends up with 25 points, 10 assists. He hits the number right on the mark. He was 10 for 19 from the field. In the late game, obviously the slip cashed. Very early, Kuminga took care of the numbers. Even though he didn't play the last 18 minutes of the game, still hit his numbers that we laid for him here. Jamal Murray hit the assist very early. Damian Lillard leg already hit, obviously, before this game even started. So we're sitting here, man. Jamal Murray did not have a single point in the first quarter. I was worried. Michael Porter Jr. did not have a single rebound in the first quarter. I was worried. As we approach the second half, Michael Porter Jr., 3 rebounds going into halftime. I'm ecstatic, right? I'm like, yeah, he's hitting that definitely. Michael Porter Jr., I think he went into the half with maybe like 13 points, something like that. He needed 10 points after the half. So 13 would make sense. Ultimately, we get to the fourth quarter. Michael Porter Jr. still does not have that rebound, man. Jamal Murray approaching. We know he's going to get it. They're going to need it from him to end the game and get where they want to get to. Ultimately, Jamal Murray ends up exceeding that, getting to that number easily. But then Michael Porter Jr., man, we're halfway through the fourth, and I'm just sweating. I'm sweating. I'm like, this man, this 6'9", 6'10" motherfucking power forward, small forward, whatever the fuck you want to call him, is really about to not grab me 4 boards tonight to win me $174. Mind you, it was a rebound that got tipped around a bunch. Michael Porter Jr. comes down with it, gets credited with the 4th rebound of the night, and the ticket cashes. But man, just wanted to share that with you guys. That was an awesome slip. Shout out to my boy Mark. I will bring these slips to the channel anytime I get a chance to preemptively, just so I can share them with you guys to have a chance. But that was honestly not even the most exciting part of last night. I mean, it was for me, but for the NBA community, it was not. You had the Bucks, first of all, in this first game against the Spurs. You had the Bucks taking care of business in San Antonio, 125-121 win. You had Giannis with 44 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 for 3 from the three-point line. So a great night shooting for Giannis. Victor Wembanyama, 27 points, 9 rebounds, 5 blocks. He was 10 for 18 from the field. Dame Lillard, as I mentioned earlier, 25 points, 10 assists, 10 for 19 from the field. And then Devin Vassell, another guy I wanted to mention here, 34 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 14 for 21 from the field, 6 for 9 from the three-point line. One of my favorite players in the NBA, one of my favorite young players, I should say. In Devin Vassell, he's a guy that can help any team. He's just a pure scorer. Love his game, 34 in that game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 6 3-pointers made. A closer game than I think everyone expected, though, from the Bucks and the San Antonio Spurs. And that is because Victor Wembanyama showed something that I really haven't seen from him yet this season. I mean, obviously, he's had flashes of greatness. He's a freak. He's a unicorn. He's going to show you signs of greatness each and every night. But this was the most impressive game that I've gotten to watch from Victor Wembanyama because he's going against a two-time MVP, an NBA champion in Giannis, an NBA champion caliber team in the Milwaukee Bucks. And he's able to contribute the way he did with 27 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Kept this game close. There was a ton of excitement for the San Antonio home crowd, which you love to see for a team that's just simply struggling this season, right? Doesn't really make sense why they're losing so many games aside from them being stuck in the tumultuous Western Conference. But it was great to see San Antonio rocking like that last night in a key marquee matchup on TNT last night, nationally televised. It was impressive to see Victor Wembanyama show up. You heard Giannis talk about Wemby after the game. He was just completely wowed by him. He says he expects great things for him. And it's just funny to me when you look at these guys next to each other on the same court as each other. That's Giannis is literally the optimal version of Victor Wembanyama, the shoulders, right? Building the muscle up on the body on his slender frame. That is what Wembanyama needs to do with himself, right? That's the way he needs to build himself up. And to that point, it was really amazing to sit back and watch those two freaks, those two unicorns simply go at it. Just simply go at it in this game. I will be interested. It made me excited for, future matchups. Embiid versus Wemby, Chet versus Wemby. Obviously, they've matched up already this season. Jokic versus Wemby. I'm so excited for these matchups that we're going to see with this young kid. And I just want to see how he fares against these guys, man. But definitely passed the litmus test last night, just for my money. Moving on to the second game. This game was even better, right? You have the defending champions taking on also the former champions, right? The 4-time champions in the Golden State Warriors. Maybe they're 4 or 5. I'm forgetting. I'm pretty sure Steph has 4 rings. Let me stop confusing myself there. In this game, you had Jokic take this game over. 34 points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists, 1 rebound away from a triple-double, 13 for 16 from the field, including the game-winning bank 3-point shot that stole this game away from the Warriors in Golden State. Aaron Gordon had a monster game in this one, 30 points, 9 rebounds. He was 11 for 17 from the field. He was really that X factor outside of Jokic and Jamal Murray. It was really Aaron Gordon that pioneered and helped this team get back. And really specifically in the stretch in the fourth quarter, there was a point where Aaron Gordon took over with his hustle, his persistence, his strength, getting to the lane, finishing in the lane, knocking down some free throws, dunks, rebounds, oops, all across the board in that fourth quarter. Really helped Jokic come away with this W. But on the other side, you had Steph Curry with a great night, 30 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 11 for 23 from the field, 5 for 12 from the three-point line. Klay Thompson also had a great night, 24 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 for 10 from the three-point line. Both of your Splash Brothers showed up for this one. Everyone else just did not. And it showed up late in this game. Obviously, the Warriors, I mentioned earlier, went into the fourth quarter with a 13-point lead. That lead actually grew, I believe, to around 17 points at some point in that fourth quarter. There was a certain point midway through where I think the Nuggets were down 15 or 16 points, and they called a full timeout because the Warriors just went on a run. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, my God, we're going to miss on this Michael Porter Jr. rebound because they're going to take the starters out. They're on the front end of a back-to-back. They're going to take their starters out so they can rest up for tomorrow night's action and try to get a win there. Thought they were going to throw in the towel, man. That is why I'm so impressed by this Denver Nuggets team after this win. I know it's a win against a struggling Warriors team this season. It was in Golden State. It's still West Coast time, though, right? They have everybody available, but this is a championship-esque win for me. Like, obviously, they have the pedigree. They won the championship last year, but this game kind of embodied that for me. Watching them play in this game and watching Mike Malone not let his team give up, not throw in the towel and take his starters out was thoroughly impressive to me to watch them come back and ultimately win this game. I was impressed that they actually got back into the game in the fourth quarter. There was a point where they tied it up. And Aaron Gordon, he catches an oop from Nikola Jokic. The place is just electric up and down the court. I was impressed that they came back to tie the game. Then Nikola Jokic hits the game winner to win the game. Such a demoralizing loss for the Golden State Warriors at home. Just the game that they can't afford to lose this season, where they're trying to gain ground in a very, very competitive Western Conference. And they've only got a few more shots, man, because you cannot sink too far down in this conference. That conference is stacked, right? So this was a miserable loss by the Warriors. It was a thoroughly impressive win by the Denver Nuggets. Warriors had control throughout, but ultimately Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray lead the Denver Nuggets to this win. This 2-game slate, once again, was purely and simply amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed watching basketball last night for a full 2 games. Like, doesn't happen usually on a nightly basis where you get to watch 2 full NBA games and thoroughly enjoy both because they're both highly competitive. That was the case last night on TNT. And so to that point, I commend the NBA for scheduling it that way. Hopefully it works out like that in the future. But let's take a look here at the updated power rankings, my guys. So it's been a while. Take these rankings with a grain of salt. I know the graphics are a little small there on your screen, so if you can't see it, I'm sorry. I will be sharing it out on my Twitter page at Scotty Drowned is where you can find me there. And I will be posting this actually before this episode airs. So you'll see this episode. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably already saw these rankings. But I'm going to break them down for you now. So we'll go 10-1 from the bottom, and I'll kind of just highlight each team. Number 10, I have the Miami Heat, who are currently 20-14. They are in the Eastern Conference standings. Let me get them pulled up here because I don't actually have that written down. I know that definitely played in a factor. Now, let me be clear with the power rankings. Conference standing, record, it all matters, but it is not the sole deciding factors, right? They're not the sole deciding factors in where these teams end up ranking out. But you look at where the Miami Heat rank in the conference right now, they're actually the 4th seed right behind the Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference. So they come in at number 10 for me. They're 6-4 in their last 10. And they just came into LA and got a very tough win against the LA Lakers without Jimmy Butler, man. So that was a very good win for them. They're playing some good basketball. They need to get Jimmy back healthy. Bam playing great basketball. The rookie, I don't want to butcher his name. Is it Jamie Jaquez Jr.? I'm not going to sit here and say it again. The rookie from Miami, very good, very much exceeding what his expectations of where he was drafted. And you could even include him in the Chet and Wemby talk as far as production. I don't think potential-wise it's there, but production-wise it is there. But nonetheless, Miami is looking pretty good to start this season as the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. Coming in at number 9, we have the Sacramento Kings. Ultimately, the Sacramento Kings are 20-13 right now. They're 6-4 in their last 10 as well. They're coming off a thrilling victory in double overtime against the Orlando Magic on Wednesday. You look at where the Kings stand in the Western Conference. They're currently 5th in the Western Conference, right behind the LA Clippers. This is a pretty good feat for them so far this season. We'll have to wait it out and see if they are actually real, if they're going to be a top 5 seed in the West. But nonetheless, this is very impressive so far for the Sacramento Kings. Coming off a great year last year, everybody expected them to take a little bit of regression because they didn't necessarily improve their team in the offseason. But nonetheless, they're still living up to what they did last year. And just hope to see them continue with success. I actually like this young Sacramento Kings team led by De'Aaron Fox, man. But they come in at number 9 for me right now. Next, we got the New Orleans Pelicans, who have been on fire of late. They're 21-14 on the season. They are below the Sacramento Kings in the Western Conference standings at the 6th seed. But they've actually won 4 straight, and they're 7-3 in their last 10. So they are playing some really, really good basketball right now. Zion healthy, Brandon Ingram healthy, CJ McCollum healthy, with a plethora of young talent surrounding those guys. I look forward to continuing to see this team grow as long as that core 3 can stay healthy there. Next, we have a team that is just absolutely on fire. Definitely a team that I'm keeping an eye on as a legitimate contender. Shout out to my guy, Zach Noble. He's been praising this team since they completed the trade for James Harden. And I'm talking about the LA Clippers, man. They're 21-12 on the season so far. They are the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and they have won 4 straight. The LA Clippers are on fire. Keep all that in mind of the last 10. That's with a few games where Kawhi Leonard did not suit up due to injury. He is back now. He was in their last victory just a few nights ago. He is playing out of his mind. He's playing MVP level basketball. He just needs to play more games, stay healthy. But Kawhi Leonard is playing MVP level basketball, championship level basketball. Then you throw in Paul George, who's playing really well, Russell Westbrook, who's coming off the bench, and James Harden, who, as much as I've hated on him since he, demanded the trade from Philly, since he was traded from Philly, definitely rooting on his downfall. But let me be honest with you, as somebody who truly loves the NBA, James Harden is playing great basketball right now. Great basketball right now. He's fitting seamlessly for this LA Clippers team. And to that, right now, they look like a legitimate contender. We have to see how that plays out in the playoffs, right? Playoff P, James Harden, a couple guys there that are known for flopping in the postseason, but they do have a former champion in Kawhi Leonard that is healthy right now. He's going to be key to their success. Kawhi Leonard has to stay healthy. Coming in at number 6, I have the Milwaukee Bucks coming off their win last night against the Spurs. Although they got the win, a little too close for my liking. Not nitpicking. A win is a win, though. Milwaukee Bucks 25-10 on the season. They're 7-3 in their last 10. And as I mentioned, they beat the San Antonio Spurs last night. They are still currently number 2 in the Eastern Conference, right ahead of the 76ers, right behind the Boston Celtics. I ultimately think this is going to be your top 3 team. They're going to be a top 3 team throughout the regular season, going into the postseason. And Milwaukee's going to be one of the juggernauts of the East. We know that. Along with that, they are playing some really good basketball right now. Just for my money, not better basketball than the teams ahead of them. But Giannis, MVP candidate for sure. Dame Lillard's still trying to iron things out there. They got Pat Connaughton back. Guys trying to figure out the roles between Brook Lopez, Connaughton, Malik Beasley, so on and so forth. Campaign, all these new additions they had this offseason. They're still figuring some things out, but still, once again, I'll repeat it. This is one of the juggernauts of the Eastern Conference and of the NBA when you talk about legitimate contenders. They come in at number 6 right now. Coming in at number 5 is going to be my Philadelphia 76ers. Call me biased for putting them over the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks are still ahead of the 76ers. They do have 2 more wins with the same amount of losses as the 76ers. Completely understand it. I just think the 76ers are playing better basketball. I think that Tyrese Maxey has legitimately been better than Damian Lillard this season. I think that Joel Embiid has legitimately been better than Giannis this season. And that's not dissing Giannis. Giannis is having an excellent season, an MVP caliber season. Joel Embiid is as well. He's the MVP candidate that is higher up for my money right now. That being said, you also have guys like Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, Nikolai Batum, guys that are ultimately helping this team and filling in the margins for this team. And this team is locked in. They're running in unison. Nick Nurse has these guys locked in. He's trying different things across each and every game, across each and every matchup. And for that, for the versatility that the Philadelphia 76ers present, that is why I have them here at number 5. Obviously, 23-10, 7-3 in their last 10, and they just beat Chicago, who they've struggled against this season in their last matchup on Tuesday. Nonetheless, I love what this team's doing. As I mentioned, I think this team is so deep, and it's just a team that I think will only get better with whatever move they decide to make at the trade deadline. That's not to exempt these other teams we talked about from making moves at the trade deadline. We're not factoring that in here at all. I'm factoring in simply where and how the Philadelphia 76ers are currently playing basketball. You also, by the way, had Embiid miss, I believe, 4 or 5 games over the holiday stretch. Ultimately, the Sixers were able to stay afloat in the Eastern Conference and maintain their success, even without the MVP candidate there. So that was great to see Tyrese Maxey kind of lead the way solely for a few games there. Coming in at number 4, we got the defending champions, the Denver Nuggets. They're 25-11 coming off that W last night in Golden State. They do play tonight. Who did the Nuggets take on tonight? Because they are on a back-to-back. They got the Magic coming to Denver tonight. So that'll be an interesting game to keep an eye on tonight. One of the better matchups that we will see. A young, inspiring Orlando team coming into Denver to take on the defending champs. 8-2 in their last 10. Currently the 3 seed in the West behind the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Love what the Denver Nuggets are doing. As I mentioned, that win last night against Golden State, coming back from down 13 points at the beginning of the fourth quarter to win that game off of Nikola Jokic, game-winning bank 3. Thoroughly impressed with that game last night. Thoroughly impressed with that win. And I imagine by the end of this season, these guys will be approaching the number 1 or the number 2 spot on these power rankings. They are the team to beat. Coming in at number 3, we have the new team on the block, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They did drop down a few spots since the last time I made these power rankings. But nonetheless, still the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, 24-9 on the season, 6-4 in their last 10. They have struggled a little bit. They are on a 2-game losing streak. They lost to the New York Knicks, who I mentioned earlier. And they also lost to the New Orleans Pelicans. No slouch teams by any means, so didn't penalize them too much for that. They are playing some really good basketball. Rudy Gobert, the anchor in the paint. Karl Anthony Towns is that floor spacing big that's been able to spread the floor. And Anthony Edwards is that pure scorer that can do it all on the offensive end. Pretty good defender for his athleticism as well in the defensive end. And then you throw in guys like Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, who are having great seasons so far. Coming in at number 2, obviously these young guys, they have been thoroughly impressive. They're coming off wins against the Boston Celtics this past week. There was another juggernaut mentioned in there, mixed in there in that schedule. They did just lose to the Atlanta Hawks, so obviously a few points come off for that. But 8-2 in their last 10. They're 23-10 in the Western Conference. Number 2 seed in the West right now. With as young as they are, they have a legitimate MVP candidate in SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that can lead them to very high places. Don't know if it's going to be this season. The ruling is still out, but this guy can lead this team to very high places, and he has the guys around him that are going to grow into pieces that will help him get where he's trying to get to. But yeah, this OKC team has been beyond impressive to start this season, and I only expect him to grow more. It'll be interesting. I know Sam Presti has talked about the trade deadline. He's not really interested in moving any pieces, any draft capital. He wants to see what he has with this team. Man, bring in an impactful defensive-esque center that can rebound and defend the paint. I think you'll be talking about this team as a serious contender come playoffs, man. Just off of what I've seen so far, obviously things can flail out, right? They can flame out and not end up the way they've looked at first. But I don't know. With a guy like SGA leading the way, with guys like Chet, right? Jalen Williams. I mean, these guys are impressive to say the least. Even guys like Lou Dort, who's just turned himself into a legitimate 3-and-D guy. Isaiah Joe off the bench that can just light you up from 3. They are covered across the board. I love what I'm seeing from them, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the season from these guys. Coming in at number 1, it's the only legitimate contender that we haven't mentioned. It's a team I hate, but it is the Boston Celtics. They're 26-7 on the season right now. They have the number 1 record in the entire league. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They are coming off a loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder on Tuesday, where they could not stop SGA. That being said, you got to give them credit for their work up to this point so far. And to that point, I am thoroughly enjoying it here. What's going on here? Seems like we froze. Hmm. Wow. Truly hope that I am not froze on the screen like this. Wow. Let's try this. Refresh. Oh my goodness, man. Streamyard is completely crapping out on me. That is great. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Okay, so we're not frozen here now. Okay, wow. Well, I am sorry about that. I definitely lost my train of thought through that debacle. I apologize. If you hung out here with me through that, I appreciate you. If you heard me complaining, I apologize for being such a complainer here, but that is pretty annoying, StreamYard. I will be submitting some feedback regarding that because that's completely inappropriate after I've recorded 40 minutes of content here. I'm not going to start over. So, yeah, very disappointed with StreamYard there, but nonetheless, the Boston Celtics round out the top 10 power rankings for January 5th, 2024 here. So definitely let me know in the comments how disappointed you are in StreamYard or how disappointed you are in my power rankings here, my top 10. But we'll be coming at you every Friday with those updated top 10 power rankings from myself and Slim um, once he joins me regularly starting next week. Once again, going to finish out the show here, guys, just with a little bit to look forward in 2024. I already mentioned my schedule to you going forward. So if you missed that part, go back to the beginning of the episode after this ends and check that out for sure. Get an update of when the content's going to be coming to you each and every week, Tuesdays and Fridays, consistently with Zach Noble and Slim. Also, as far as the NBA, what to look for in 2024 for the NBA as a whole, right? I think the big thing right now, trade deadline and All-Star weekend, right? The trade deadline, we're going to be looking at names like Pascal Siakam, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray. Those are the big names, right, that we're going to be watching at the trade deadline. But then you have guys like Malcolm Brogdon, Kyle Kuzma, Tyus Jones, Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter, Davion Mitchell, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic up from Detroit. There's just a ton of guys that are going to become available that we haven't even heard about. Those are a few of the names that I have heard recently. But I am looking forward to seeing how the trade deadline works out and to see how many pieces are actually going to be moving here. Chet versus Wemby. Who's going to win that Rookie of the Year? I think Wemby made up some ground last night, and with his recent plays, obviously dealing with the ankle injury, so he's on limited minutes nightly. But I am interested to see how that Rookie of the Year campaign finishes out. Looking at who's real versus who's fake, there's a few new teams this season, such as the Indiana Pacers, the Orlando Magic, right? The Oklahoma City Thunder. Are these teams real or are these teams fake? Has the spotlight come too quickly for them? for the likes of the Magic, for the likes of the Pacers who were in the in-season tournament championship, Oklahoma City, who's the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. And then I would even throw in teams like the Pelicans, who we've just never been able to see stay healthy. The Dallas Mavericks, who appear to have gotten Luka Doncic some help there. The LA Clippers with James Harden, Russell Westbrook off the bench. The Philadelphia 76ers, who we have not seen get out of the second round in who knows how long. I believe it was since 2001 or 2000 when AI took us to the finals. The Sacramento Kings, right? They made the playoffs last year. A lot of people expected them to regress because they didn't make any significant improvements in the offseason. So who's real versus who's fake in 2024 in the NBA? The MVP race, right? Joel Embiid averaged 40 points, 12 rebounds in the month of December. Giannis ends up winning the Eastern Conference Player of the Month for December because he played so well. Both of those guys in the race for MVP. SGA out in Oklahoma City in the Western Conference. He's obviously in the race for MVP with his play. Nikola Jokic, always going to be there. Luka Doncic, always going to be there with the numbers that they put up. So that MVP race is going to get heated at some point. And then I'm looking at new All-Stars, right? Who are the new All-Stars going to be at All-Star Weekend this year? I'm looking at guys, obviously, like Tyrese Maxey. I'm a Sixers fan. I want to see him make his first All-Star game. I want to see him get recognized for the work that he is putting in this season. He deserves to be an All-Star. Guys like Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero from Orlando, they deserve to have a guy make the All-Star team. Victor Wembanyama, he's a popular player. I know maybe his play hasn't warranted an All-Star selection. He's a popular player. I would love to see him make it. Chet Holmgren, another guy who's a popular young player, maybe doesn't warrant an All-Star trip, but he's on his 2 seed. He's averaging, 17, 16 points on the season. He's a rookie, blocks shots. He's a great defensive player. Maybe he does deserve a spot, and I'd love to see him get it. Alperen Sengun down in Houston. He's playing out of his mind this season. He deserves a spot. Mikal Bridges, obviously, on the Brooklyn Nets. He leads the way there. He could get a spot. Kyle Kuzma is in the top 10 for front court voting for All-Star selection. Who knows? Maybe he gets on the team. Derek White having an incredible season for the Boston Celtics. That trade from San Antonio to Boston changed his life, changed the Boston Celtics team forever. He's another guy that's in the top 10 for voting for guards in the Eastern Conference for All-Star Weekend. And then Jalen Brunson, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember. I didn't look this up before coming into the show. I believe Jalen Brunson might have made the All-Star team last year for the New York Knicks because he had his breakout year with the Knicks. Nonetheless, I listed him here just in case he hasn't made one yet. He would be another guy that is set to make an All-Star game and be one of the newer players there for All-Star Weekend. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this pans out. Want to see Maxey climb that list. He's 5th amongst guards in the East right now. Need to get him up past guys like Trae Young, Damian Lillard. I think he's having a better season than those guys. Not having a better season than Halliburton, though. I think Halliburton's playing top-class basketball from the guard position in the Eastern Conference. But I need to see Maxey get up there in the top 3, man. He deserves to make the All-Star Weekend. So, guys, make sure you're heading out there, getting your votes in for the All-Star Weekend. Make sure you're getting the players that you love put into the All-Star race. I froze up there for a second because I see restart up here on StreamYard, and I thought the shit like restarted and stopped, and this wasn't recording. We are good. I am sorry for the technical issues today, guys, but please hit the subscribe button on the channel. I promise you I'm going to get this stuff ironed out with StreamYard, and this will not be happening moving forward. But I truly appreciate each and every one of you that took the time to tune into this episode, listen to me ramble here. Promise you it'll be a little more interesting once I get my co-host back next week and regularly going forward. Zach Noble with me on Tuesdays of Scotty Talks NBA and Slim on with me on Fridays of Scotty Talks NBA. Once the once the NFL season concludes, we'll have some more Scotty Talks NBA episodes coming out weekly for you. But for now, guys, please enjoy the rest of your Friday there. And go Sixers. They play tonight to take on the Knicks on ESPN. So definitely check that out. But, guys, once again, Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to give a subscription to this channel, Scotty Talks NBA, and be sure to check out our other channels under the DSM Media umbrella. At NFL Turf Talk covers the complete NFL season all the way through the Super Bowl run, and then DSM Media Philadelphia edition. It's our crew that covers specifically Philadelphia sports. That's myself and Dylan there with the Faithful Fanatic. So be sure to check out both of those pages as well as this one and hit that subscribe button. Have a great rest of